Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Have a Seat with Chris Hansen as we continue our investigation into Dahvie Vanity, the one-time lead man of Blood on the Dance Floor. Tonight, we have a really fascinating look at this case. Two guests. We have Fallon Vendetta and Jennifer Hill, two women, performers in their own right, recording artists, who knew Dahvie very well. Lived with him. And the reason why this is so important tonight is it goes to the very heart of how Dahvie Vanity, Jesus Torres, was able to get away with this behavior, this pattern of sexual grooming and assault of underage women for so long, because he had a dual personality, it appears, by these accounts, and you'll hear more in just a few seconds here from Fallon and Jennifer. He was able to somehow maintain this rock star lifestyle with people of appropriate age, with seemingly somewhat appropriate relationships. And at the same time, because he needed these people for songwriting, voice coaching, backup vocals, musician work, so he kept those relationships pretty together, but he was still able to, behind these people's backs in some cases, many cases, to conduct this kind of behavior that has brought this spotlight upon him. And we can report tonight multiple criminal investigations by local police and federal investigators as well. So we have with us, as I said, Fallon Vendetta, Jennifer Hill. I want to start with you, Fallon. How are you tonight?
Okay, I'm well. How are you?
Good. Let's start right off. How did you first meet Dahvie Vanity?
It seems like I met Dahvie pretty much the way that anybody else meets him. I met him via Instagram, which I don't usually talk to people that way, not maintaining friendships anyway. But he had liked a couple of my pictures. I liked a couple of his pictures. I think he friended me. And it was really casual back and forth for a while. Looking back through my timeline now, when he had started talking to me on Instagram, I was working on a film titled Worthless, where I actually play a high school student. So that was a little unnerving in the past few weeks to realize that. We didn't actually have a real conversation on the phone until September 5th, I believe, of 2016, which is his birthday. He had contacted me saying, can we talk? My bandmate just broke up, with me. Like he's leaving the band. I'm kind of upset. So that was the first time we really had an actual conversation.
And who was the bandmate who was leaving? Was this Jay?
That was Jay. Yep.
Okay. So Jay leaves, you come in, and give me a sense for your role professionally with Dahvie Vanity, as well as how this sort of developed in a personal sense.
We started off, from a friendship level. Then he had asked me to do a music video, which there was a young lady by the name of Winter who was involved. So we'll get into that. From there, I began writing music with him. I did a couple tours with him. And then he had talked about, how he really missed doing Blood on the Dance Floor and still had this great fan base. And, that was his baby. And I said, well, if you love it so much, why aren't you doing it anymore? If, this is your heart and soul. And he was like, you're right. I really shouldn't just quit. And I said, no, you shouldn't. I'll help you if you need help, because at that point, he was a really great guy to me. And he was like, yeah, all right, let's do this. And I didn't mean that I wanted to be, a member of that band, but that's kind of what it turned into.
And you were in a different place in life than Dahvie Vanity. You already had kids, right?
Well, very much so. Yes. I had two children, and they were already older. And this is something I had been involved in my entire life. So, a lot of my time was obviously focused on that or my film career. And I did some producing as well. So when I started working with him, he was actually in Ohio and I was in Pennsylvania. So I would travel back and forth pretty frequently.
And you come from an entertainment family. So, you're used to people who could be a bit eccentric, but did you have any idea when you were working with Dahvie Vanity that he was involved in the grooming and alleged sexual assault of dozens and dozens, if not hundreds.
No,
Young women.
it's the most upsetting part about this to me is I didn't have any history of blood on the dance floor. I didn't know who Dahvie was. I didn't really look into that because it just, initially popping up, he just was somebody in entertainment, and he was working at the time as listeners or winners. And as we had started working together, there were some things that had come up. The first thing came up because a photographer friend of mine, he was a wonderful photographer. Dahvie had seen some of his work and was like, listen, I want to do like an autobiography. Like this guy does great work. Do you think he would be interested in doing the photography for the book? And I said, sure, I'll ask him. And he came back to me and he said, Fallon, like this guy doesn't have a good reputation. I don't know that I want to be involved with this. So I was like, well, what are you talking about? And he's like, I don't know. Maybe there's some stuff online if you can find anything. There was like some tweets and I found the tweets from Jeffree Star, and I found what looked like some type of arrest record, but there were a couple different copies of it. So I was like, what the heck is this? And I asked Dahvie, and he said, hey, there was this girl. She was, 17 years old, but she lied about her age, but it was at a concert in Colorado, and it was totally consensual. It was oral sex. And then she went home and her parents kind of like flipped out about it. And like, the cops came and picked me up and everything was dismissed because it was consensual. And, it seemed like a very judgment on his part. But the way that he painted this picture was that was the only incident that had happened. And, any other interactions seemed like normal interactions to me at that time.
Now, we had that young woman on our show last week at this very time who talked about this, really, really horrific attack on her, and how it went down, and how, in hindsight, looking back, he was able to get away with this because of the lack of physical evidence and, other circumstances, not the survivor's fault in this case. But did you believe him when he gave you that excuse about the Colorado incident at the concert?
No, I did at the time, because he's very, as everyone is learning here, he's very, very manipulative, and he's a very good salesman, I guess. Like I said, when I first met him, he was sweet and he was charming and he seemed very gentlemanly at times. He was a little off professionally, but it wasn't anything that raised a flag at that time. And his story seemed believable. And when I went to look for things, I couldn't find anything. So that was what kind of made it really hard. And as time would progress, and I was more involved with the band, that's when I was inundated with, all types of online harassment. My inbox was filling up with things, and it became really confusing because I'm like, at this point, already so involved with this guy, and I really didn't know what to make of any of it, So
you're performing with Dahvie Vanity. You're at one point living with Dahvie Vanity. Were you romantically involved? Were you boyfriend and girlfriend with him?
At one point, yes, we were. So we had started working together first, and we were friends first. And he said, I really have feelings for you. And like I said, at that time, he seemed very gentlemanly, and he was, still living in Ohio. I was living in Pennsylvania, and he would come out to see me. And, I was like, well, that's really nice, but it wasn't like a really serious relationship. And then it kind of started to dissolve, with him still living in Ohio. It was like, there were other girls coming into the picture that I knew of that he would talk to. And it just seemed off. It seemed like he was almost like that. I don't know how to state it. I guess that spoiled rock star kind of mentality, that he had lived this previous lifestyle where he wasn't in really a committed relationship. And, he told me, listen, I'm sorry, I cheated on you a couple times. Like this is what happened. And again, it seemed like a legitimate story. And at that point, I was like, man, this is like devastating, but I guess I like forgave I think he really wanted to, sorry to start crying like a baby again. I really thought that, you know, he was just trying to change his lifestyle. And then, you know, we did some tours and whatnot in between then. And it was so on and off with him. It finally seemed like it was going to be more serious when he did move in with me. But as soon as he got here, we basically had everything in boxes. We went to Scotland, we toured Japan. It was like all of this stuff right back to back. And when we got back from Japan, I knew Japan was the deciding trip that I was like, this is not going to work. And by that point, Japan had already made it. So, you know, he like proposed to me in Japan. You know, and in Scotland, he had said something about, you know, us getting married. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, there was like a post that went up about it. I don't think he ever took it seriously. I think he kind of just said that.
Did you have,
you know, I mean, he had girls coming to try to meet him in Scotland.
Did he have, looking back, Fallon, did he have any kind of control over you? Did you feel beholden to him, or did you actually feel like you were in some sort of a relationship with him?
You know, I guess at one point I wanted to believe I was in a relationship with him because I thought, you know, he was a good guy. And then it got to the point where he would make certain comments, especially when it came to things with work. There were times when he would become really agitated with me that he just wouldn't want me around. And, you know, he would even say things with the band, like, you know, I started this project without you. I don't need you to do this. This is my baby. You know, you even said that yourself. I mean, I just brought you on. So he's really nasty that way. And then, of course, he would, you know, I guess try to smooth that over. And initially, like, there was income coming in from that. And as this progressed, because I was targeted so much, you know, with all of this other stuff online that you couldn't make heads or tails of, it was debilitating to my career personally. And then, you know, he made me feel like I couldn't go and do anything else because I needed to focus on the band. And if I wasn't doing that, then the mortgage wasn't getting paid. And if the mortgage wasn't getting paid, how am I going to have a roof over my children's head? And he became really manipulative that way. I mean, he was pretty much in control of everything.
People will ask, Fallon, how could you not have known about his pattern of behavior, his abuse of young women, his history, and you lived with him?
Yeah.
How could you not have known about this?
Yeah. It's crazy to look back at anything now, and talking to other people and like getting these puzzle pieces, because I was asking myself the same thing, you know, especially when I found out concrete stories of this, you know, legitimate things that have happened. You know, I was wondering, like, how was I not aware of any of this? And, you know, he and I didn't sleep in the same room. It was more or less like a roommate situation. And he was very much to himself. You know, he would lock himself in one of the bathrooms for hours, and either do his hair or take a bath, you know, or he would disappear to go to the movies, or he was going to the mall, or, you know, I didn't really ask a whole lot about where he was going because I didn't really think that was something that I had to monitor. Plus, I mean, I have children and my life from him was completely separate. So, you know, I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm getting them off to school. He didn't wake up till like 2 or 3. And by that point, then he wanted to do work. And it was pretty much all work. And then it's me getting the kids ready, getting them to bed. And then he wanted to work again or record or whatever we had to do. And by that point, it'd be like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was barely sleeping. I mean, I literally would stay up until like 3, and then it'd be back up again at 6.
Did he ever force you into anything against your will, physically, sexually, mentally?
Sexually, definitely not. That was really kind of a weird instance because especially when we were together, he never really seemed interested in any of that with me. And he had made some really interesting comments, which now makes sense, that he's really just into, rough oral. That was kind of his thing, which, I mean, I'm like, come on. I'm like, that's like disrespectful stuff. I'm like, I'm not really into that. And
do you think looking back,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
do you think looking back that he used you as a beard?
Completely. I mean, I think about certain comments that he made, even when we would do lives, he was like, oh, like I have this hot girlfriend in her 30s. And like, he always made it a point to say like, oh, this girl's in her 30s. And after things that he's told other people, things that he told Winter, things that he told Tessa, he would manipulate these girls too, and telling them that, it was always just strictly business, that there was nothing else. And at one point, like I said, there was, but, even when he did tell me about people that he cheated on me with, they were all older ladies. And the whole thing is just, I'm sorry. I'm like boggled completely at this point.
Did you see him with underage girls in your time together?
In the aspect of anything that was inappropriate, no, certainly not. What I did see was, and come to find out, this end result, which I'll get to, we did a music video that transpired October of 2016. So this was actually pretty early into me meeting him.
This is the incident with the girl named Winter.
This is the incident with the girl named Winter. So yes, we did a music video. She was there. She was there with her mother, actually. I still trust my mom. And I didn't even know that she was underage until, much later than this. But, we did the music video and everything seemed normal. Come to find out that even during that music video, I mean, and there were a ton of other people in that house, and his former drummer and, merch team were living there at the time. And we actually just talked about it today. And, they're mind blown because they can't believe any of this happened with them in the house either. But he snuck her downstairs and assaulted her, Winter, while everyone was there. And he actually continued some type of interaction with her until after she was 18 years old. Sorry.
All right.
So
it's emotional.
Yeah. So there were times that he would call her in front of me and it seemed totally normal, but he would just kind of, he would kind of walk around and he would come back and he would disappear. And, I'm like doing my own things too. I'm not sitting there monitoring his phone calls, but when I was talking to Winter, then she would tell me that he would call around me. She knew I was there, but it would be really weird for her because he would all of a sudden say something really sexual and he would kind of like perpetuate that. And then he would just stop and go back to normal, which now leads me to believe that I guess he would kind of do that when I was around and then he would leave and come back, because he didn't want me to hear anything.
What made you finally leave Dahvie Vanity, Fallon?
So these things had been mounting and mounting, and there was so much harassment, and some of the things that I was getting, it didn't sit right with me, but it wasn't something that I could necessarily prove. I felt really uncomfortable, and the final straw with him, which at least from a respect standpoint, I was working on some graphic work and my computer was being really slow. So I asked if I could use his. He was really hesitant about it. I finally, got the computer from him and I was trying to do homework with my daughter. And as I'm sitting there trying to multitask, I'm in the other room, he's like locked in the bedroom working on music. Stuff starts popping up on the computer. And I was like, what the heck is that? And next thing I know, there was like, a girl's chest. And I was like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. Like this is, it was a I guess like when you do the cloud or when your messages sync on the computer, and I automatically was like in shock. I'm like, really? Like, are you kidding me? I'm trying to do work, and like, this is what this guy's doing. And I was so upset. And I was like, Carlo, honey, I'll be back. She's my daughter. I'm like, I need to take care of something. So just stay here. So I went in the other room and I was like, listen, I'm not going to deal with this. You know, like, this is absolutely out of control. If you feel the need to do this, I don't understand why you need to do this now or here, or, you know. And I did question him, and I was like, well, how old is this girl? And he was like, excuse me, are you really going to start with this? And, you know, there had been so much coming in that I was like, this is insanity. And I was like, I'm not going to deal with this. And I remember him pushing the laptop, and I ended up closing the laptop. And then he started saying I was slamming it, and it just progressed into this whole big situation. He got really aggressive with me, and then started, you know, I mean, more yelling at this point, but verbally aggressive. Went into where the walk-in closet was, and he starts pulling stuff out, and he pulls out a shirt, and a hanger comes out and smacks me in the face. And I was like, Dahvie, you know, there's children in this house right now. This is not going to happen. You can leave, you can do whatever you want to do, but you need to calm down, because they're not aware of anything, and that's not fair to them, and I'm not going to involve them. So if you could please calm down. And it got to the point where he had a bunch of stuff. I kind of like pushed it back by the door, because I was like not wanting any scene at this point. And he, from that point, got really pushy with me. I ended up falling, and I was like, this is not okay. This is absolutely not okay. So I was like, I'm done. I'm done. So I was like, you know, you need to leave. You need to figure out what you're doing. And, you know, for the next couple, he was still here for a couple weeks. We kept distance. The kids were with their dad more. I worked more at a haunted attraction because it was that time of year. And then he said that, you know, he wanted to make sure I was okay before he moved out, which I thought was ridiculous. I mean, there was no making sure I was okay at that point. And then he moved to Florida. It was like November, I believe, beginning of November.
I want to bring Jennifer Hill in, who's also a recording artist and a songwriter, and acted as a voice coach for Dahvie Vanity. Now, Jennifer, you were present during some of the time when Fallon Vendetta was also there. Bring me into the story in terms of how you met Dahvie Vanity and how you started working with him and that experience.
I actually met Dahvie, like most people, through his music. My daughter had been a fan, and it come to find out we had shared a common bandmate, and my bandmate had moved to Florida and started writing music with Dahvie. So when I went to the show, he had already kind of done some homework on me. And when I got there, he kind of was like, hi, you know, Jennifer Hill, got down on one knee and kissed my hand and was like, nice to meet you, and gave me the whole, you know, very big welcoming. And at the end of the show, he asked me to wait for him behind the merch counter with my daughter so that we could go talk to him backstage. That was in about 2013. And after that, I started vocal coaching him. He asked me, you know, how he sounded live. And I told him the truth, that I thought he needed some vocal help. And I became his vocal coach and went on tour with him for a couple months across, you know, the West Coast. And then I stayed on helping him with his music up until the end of 2018.
Now, during the time you were with him, Jennifer, was he ever inappropriate with you sexually? Did he ever try anything?
No. When I first got there, there was like one little comment that he made, and I shut it down. I'm married, and I was hired to go there, you know, as a vocal coach, but I didn't expect really when I got there, what it was going to be like. I had to stay in a room with Dahvie the whole time. I didn't have my own room. He kind of kept a lot of us isolated from each other. So I was new to the whole band, so I didn't really understand what exactly was going on. But I did think it was rather odd that I saw that he was very interactive with his teenage fan base.
When you say interactive, what do you mean? Was he
Like after a show, he would go and take them all to like Friendlies or something and pay for, well, not Friendlies, it's on the West Coast, but some place like that, and pay for all of their milkshakes or something. And usually now in hindsight, I'm noticing that that was a way of grooming like one particular girl or something afterwards. And the first night that I actually was on tour with him, he did bring home a girl that ended up coming with us, who I'm not really sure of her age. At that time, he had a bodyguard who was checking everyone's IDs, and she was saying she was 19. But that was like the first experience that I had. And it seemed a lot of parents were actually knew him and were okay letting their teenagers go with him.
Did you think that he deceived you at the time? In other words, you've got yourself, Jennifer, you were a grown up at the time and a musician, recording artist in your own right. Fallon, you were there, a grown up. Yeah. Does this speak to how he was able to fool some of the people in order to get away with what he was doing with young women?
Definitely. I mean, even, Winter, her mother was present when we shot that music video, and he would call, her mom, and they seemed like they were great friends. And, the first night, ironically, that I met him as well, I was done filming for the day, and he was like, I have a show if you want to come check it out. And I was like, all right, we went to the show, me and my best friend, and afterwards he was like, do you guys want to grab some food? And we were like, yeah, we were hungry, and we went, and all of these like younger fans, he like invited these people, and I was like, okay, you invite your fans, like that's a little invasive. So.
And many times,
what was that? I'm sorry.
We did.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Like we would just all of a sudden be there, and he would have invited these people to meet up with where we are. And we're kind of like, okay, this is what's happening now.
Yeah, it was kind of random. And I think that's a lot of the reason why he and I would start to butt heads, because, I was like, that's a little strange. So, I didn't really want that, or I didn't want, fans over, or I didn't, and he would get upset with me about it. He's like, well, this is what Blood on the Dance Floor was all about when it was founded. We don't have fans, we have family. And I was like, that's great, Dahvie, but this is too much involvement for me. I wasn't comfortable with that level of involvement.
Jennifer, did you ever see him do anything inappropriate with an underage girl to the point where you said, hey, man, that's not good, that's illegal, that's wrong?
No, I did not. He made sure that he kept those things away from us. But I feel, as far as my role, I think that he wanted to keep me around because I'm an advocate for women who have been through abuse. I'm a survivor. I'm a survivor of sexual assault. I'm a survivor of being shot by a former lover. So my whole career has been based on saving and helping women out of these situations. And so for me, I feel very manipulated that I was brought into this whole circle of what he was doing. Because in hindsight, everyone was groomed. Everybody was manipulated. We were triangulated so that if I was...
He didn't want us to talk. He would pin people against each other completely.
Right. So do you think, Jennifer, that you were brought on this team, besides the fact that you were coaching him for vocal lessons, do you think you were brought on to be a beard sort of in the same way that Fallon feels she was?
I think for that, and I think at the same time, I mean, I didn't only vocal coach him, I helped decipher every single one of his melodies from 2013 on, because unfortunately he has a really hard time singing on key. So I had to figure out what he was actually trying to convey. and then put those things together. So I did a lot of work arranging his music to no credit. And I have seen a lot of other female musicians be used in that way. So I think I was used as a beard as far as, you know, I'm a person that's not okay with women being abused, but also that I was used for my talent. And then he would hold that, you know, carrot over you. He would pay you late or add another project onto it.
I'll give you a bonus. I'll give you a bonus. There was always that. Yeah, I'll make sure I add a nice bonus in there. Yeah. Yep.
Did he try to control you? Did he control you, Jennifer Fallon?
He controlled us all by keeping us away from each other and knowing the truth of everything. Yeah. So I think we were all triangulated against each other.
When did you figure out the depth of what he was doing, the severity, the harm that he was doing, that he had done with these young fans, Jennifer? When did it become clear to you?
What really bothered me was Jessie Slaughter. And because I had always been smart to not let my teenager stay in the house when I had Dahvie staying here, because he stayed at my house several times on tour. He wrote songs here. And I did that for two reasons: because of rumors about him, and also because professionally I didn't want my daughter, you know, fanning over somebody that I'm working with at my house. But I also have a younger daughter. Her name is Harlow as well, and she is 9 years old. And I am really, really just appalled that I had somebody around my children that was able to manipulate and do things that young.
Well, you talk about Jessie Slaughter, Damian Lanhart, who has been on this show. She was 10 when she was first sexually assaulted by Dahvie Vanity.
That's it for me.
And
yeah, that's, you know, I think that's kind of crazy too, because when I looked up stuff before, I remember Jessie Slaughter came up in joking, and it seemed like it was just some kind of, you know, online thing that kind of blew up, and I didn't really know anything about it. And I hadn't seen much about it until these investigations started going, actually. And, you know, it's one thing to say, oh, you know, I take pictures with tons of people of all ages. You know, I'm sure there's been plenty of people at my shows that were 11 and 12 years old. Dahvie had told me specifically that he never met her. There's clearly a picture of the two of them together.
So he said he never met Damian Jessie.
Oh yeah, he told me that, you know, it was just some girl that was like a crazy obsessed fan that, you know, she made some post on the internet and it kind of blew up. And then, you know, there was like a bunch of harassment from like 4chan or something. And, you know, that was kind of it. Like, it was kind of like a laughed off thing. And he was like, I didn't even meet that girl.
This person at a very young age was just absolutely dragged through the ringer by Dahvie, and suffered on many different levels because of this. I mean, the story that Damian tells, is absolutely heart-wrenching.
I had no idea. Like, I had no idea. And when I rewatched after I had seen your episode and I had seen her talk about it, I went back and watched the video that made her go viral. And when I had first watched it years ago, because it had, you know, been on television and kind of gone viral, I didn't know who Dahvie was at that point. That was before I knew him. And to watch that video and hear her dad say his name.
Hey, Dahvie, yeah, that's awful. It's like heartbreaking. I can't imagine.
Why was it so important for the two of you to come forward in this very public way and talk about this and share your experiences? And I want to get to something else in a minute about, you know, the backlash that you have received and the threats and everything from Dahvie fans. But why was it so important for you to step out there and say what you're saying right now?
Do you want to go, Jennifer?
Well, I feel like, you know, I have been a victim myself of different things, and no one believed me. And these tactics are being used to manipulate people all across the board. And when you're dealing with someone who has the fame that someone like Dahvie has, it is detrimental. I mean, we see what happens, to Jesse Slaughter. We saw what happened to other people, and it's not okay. It takes years to recover from dealing with this. People think this is their fault. They're going to wonder for years why they were able to let him, get into their heads like that. And then I also have friends who dealt with him on a personal or on a professional level, who I saw him, treat them horribly and not pay them and put them in horrible situations. And I think that all of that needs to come forward. He used people by abusing them. He used women to pretty much put together his musical career. Yes, there are lots of guys that did some great stuff on there too. I'm not going to forget you guys, but a lot of the women were thrown aside, and it's not okay. And the more women that speak out, the less this will happen.
How has he gotten away with it for so long? Jennifer, start with you.
I think because he was a master manipulator. I think he has narcissistic personality disorder, and I think he's somewhat of a sociopath. And he doesn't really think about what he's doing to people. He thinks he can move on and that each situation won't follow him. But this time they all added up and blew up.
Fallon, how do you think he got away with it? And looking back, did you think you missed something? Should you have seen the red flags, the warnings earlier?
Yeah, there are so many things I question now, or, it's like you wish that you would have, even walked in on something, as crazy as that sounds, because, replaying all of these scenarios and talking to, Winter and other girls that have come forward. There was another girl too that he lied to her and said that she was going to hang out with myself and Dahvie, and he went to meet up with her and I wasn't there. I think he uses people as pawns. He plays chess with people. He moves them however he needs to move them to benefit him and to keep his wheels in motion without raising flags. And, it's like you want to like him, unfortunately. And he tells partial truths about certain things. So you're so distracted by all of this chaos that is Dahvie and everything around him that you don't know what's going on before, things hit the fan. It's like he gets you so involved and he gets you in so deep before you realize this isn't right. This isn't okay. He uses people until there's nothing else to use. And when they're no longer a benefit to him, he discards them or he kicks them out of a tour bus and sends them home.
How many times do you suppose he sneaked out on you to meet an underage fan for a sexual tryst?
I don't question that any time that he left that he did it. And I don't know now what he did, even before he came to Pennsylvania, because I know now that every time he would leave to come from Ohio, I'm thinking oh, this is so nice. This guy's coming, we're going to work here, and seems so sweet. He had a whole list of people that he stopped to see. He would stop to see these girls on the way. And then, he would go to Florida to visit his family. And on the way, he would stop to see Winter. There was a girl from a show that he lied about and acted like he didn't even know, or that he had known for a long time rather. And then conveniently, when she came back up, he didn't know her. But there was always someone. There was always a plethora of someone I'm finding, because, there's stories now that it's he loved Starbucks. These girls would meet him at Starbucks. There were girls that apparently went to the movies with him. He would go to the gym. Did he go to the gym? You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't have any doubt that literally anything that he did at this point was what he said it was.
How many young women have come forward to you first, Fallon, to say they were victimized?
This is what makes it really tough, and what I do want to stress with this case. I, like I said, was harassed a lot online, and at the same time, I was inundated with so many messages, and you know, there would be stories that I would try to look into, and a lot of them would be, they would be from a fake profile. I would respond to them, and then, you know, these people would like send back like, ah, like they thought it was funny. You know, like I have actually now, like there are people that are coming forward, and I am able to go through, but for a while there was just so much that I actually had a friend running my social media, and it's unfortunate because some of these people got blocked because you don't know who's telling the truth. And I know she was really worried about my well-being too, because it gets to be so much. But there's been a numerous amount of girls, which I've actually been talking to the FBI about as well. There's a lot. There are a lot.
You have had young women come forward to you because of your notoriety and your fame,
Yeah.
especially online, and because of your performance work, to say, hey, I've been victimized. Can you help me? But you
Yeah.
also were targeted yourself by fans of Dahvie Vanity.
Yeah, it was terrible. I mean, there's this whole other world when it comes to him, and Jennifer can attest to that as well. I mean, they're extreme. It's like nothing you've ever experienced. There's, you know, extreme Dahvie supporters, and there's extreme hate for Dahvie, which I can understand now, but their actions aren't justified. They formulate these hate groups, and it takes away from victims who need help. It's basically like, you know, it's memes, it's making fun of people, it's you know, worrying about if his hair is a wig or not, you know, and then they slander, they attack, they you know, even tattoo magazines that I've worked with for a long time, they would post a picture of mine, and in this hate group they'd say like, okay, it's 6 o'clock, we're gonna go on, and everybody's gonna say this or say that, and they would go on, and you know, they'd say like, oh, Fallon has a big nose, or that, like, okay, cool, like whatever. But you know, it went beyond that. I was harassed so much, you know, that it did affect business colleagues of mine. They tracked down my family members. They would say things to the father of my children. You know, it's very, very detrimental. It's
And
very detrimental.
they were targeting you because you left Dahvie Vanity, or
I've been targeted because I worked with Dahvie. I've been targeted because I left Dahvie. I've been literally like, no matter
so
what.
you're getting it from both sides here.
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually sent some screen messages. I did another interview with Pastel Bell, which is on later, and I cried like a baby. But I sent her some screenshots because as all of this has been going on, even now, you know, I have people like, how dare you? He's innocent. Why were you engaged to him if he did these things? And then I have other people that, you know, it's literally just both sides. I mean, it's so much.
What toll has this taken on you, Fallon?
I'm definitely a lot more introverted now. I don't really spend as much time online, which for being in entertainment right now and how important that is, you know, it's pretty detrimental. I really am. I've been offered, you know, different other musical venues, different contracts, and it really took the joy out of music for me, which is unfortunate. I am, I guess, overly protective of my children now. I mean, it's literally affected every aspect of my life. It has me at times almost looking over my shoulder because I have had people trespassing on my property. And I don't know if that's related to him or not. But I have been honestly in fear of him. I felt like I needed to keep an open line of communication or stay friendly with him because I was afraid that, you know, he would have people attack my business ventures that I've gained back. It's not been good at all. I mean, I ended up even in the hospital with heart murmurs and whatnot after this, just because I'm so stressed out. You know, it's not been a good thing at all.
Jennifer, give me a sense for the young women who've come forward to you to say, hey, you know, I've been a victim here, and young women who know that you're a victim's advocate in this business and how you're trying to help them.
Some of them that I've known personally one in particular that I got to be really close with, who hasn't told her story. I want to be able to speak for them. I want to be able to have somebody like have their back because I know that they went through a lot. Like Fallon said, like anybody that has anything to do with Dahvie will deal with something. You know, like if it's his haters and you're working with him. I had someone go through my entire Instagram and find all the pictures of my youngest one and write like horrible things underneath them about me being a bad mom for working with him. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you have to go through when you are connected with him. And I think that the women that came forward that told me and the ones that, you know, it's up to them to come forward. I'm not going to tell their story, but I want them to know that I know they're strong and that they didn't deserve what they went through and that there's a lot of people out there that believe them and don't think that they're crazy. And the gaslighting that was done to them was not deserved.
A lot of people were targeted by Dahvie fans after they've come forward, and it's still happening. I mean, Dahvie's still, you know, active on social media. You see him on Instagram, the Dark Arts Official, selling merch. He's out there. Is he still wielding any power or trying to target these victims who have come forward?
It seems like there's stuff that's still surfacing. You know, there are, I guess, new videos and whatnot. I've watched a couple things, but I don't want to get too immersed because I'm really overwhelmed with it. But I don't know that he's going to stop doing what he's doing. It's almost like, you know, and Jennifer and I have talked about this too with him. It's like if you've ever seen the movie Split, you know, there's so many different sides to him, and he can come across as very charming and funny and sweet, and you want to like this guy. And then he's a little ditzy, and you're like, oh, this is funny, this is entertaining. And then you think, wow, he's really creative, even though it's everybody else's talents. He's almost like a parrot. So if he hears it, he kind of just recites it back. He feeds off of you. Yeah. So it's like, you know, he says everything you want to hear. And I have no doubt that if he has a platform, he's going to do this to anybody that will listen because he needs Dahvie. He needs to have that character that never goes away. He needs to have that persona. And unfortunately, that persona is not a good one at all.
Clearly, he's very good at manipulating. He did it to you, Jennifer. He did it to you, Fallon. He did it to so many other young women with whom we've spoken. Did he just know how to target and exploit a very vulnerable group in some ways? I mean, was he able to just choose and almost have this sixth sense for, okay, there's somebody who I can exploit, I can take advantage of, I can sexually
I think so.
prey on?
When I met him, I was having issues. I mean, I don't know if you were when you met him, but when I met him, I was having a couple issues at home, and he offered me the chance to go on tour. I was having some money problems, and he was like, you know, hey, come with me on tour. But then the oddest thing that he did was when he first introduced me to people, and I think of this now because I'm pretty sure this was how he was trying to get under my skin, is someone said, how did you get on tour? Like, you're married. There usually isn't like a married woman back here, like, you know, kind of hinting to me that it was like kind of odd. And he was like, well, she won't be married for long. Her husband doesn't really want her anymore. And I mean, my husband and I are going on 12 years married, and that wasn't the case. But I think he was trying to put a wedge in there so that he could also make me vulnerable at the same time.
Yeah, he does that. He'll build you up and make it seem like he's doing these great things, and he'll tear it down just as fast. Like, there's so many times that he'll, especially, you know, from a relationship standpoint, will make you feel like completely worthless, that, you know, you're undeserving, or you're not pretty enough, or you're not good enough, or there's always some aspect. And I think he does prey on that vulnerability. You know, same with me. He knew I was working on that anti-bullying project, you know, and we would talk about it, and he's like, yeah, you know, I'm all about peace and love in my music. And I was like, okay, like that was kind of the gist of that. But we started to get into deeper conversations about family life. And, my father had passed away from suicide. Actually, he shot himself. My grandfather found him. It was a really tragic story. And, we would talk about that. And there were times that he would say, like, I feel like your dad would want me in your life. And I always thought that was a bit extreme. And I knew my dad wouldn't have liked him, but I didn't want to hurt his feelings at the time. But, he definitely takes these situations where people feel like they do need to talk, or they do need to vent, or they want a friend. They want someone that they can feel that they relate to. They want to feel that comfort, and he finds a way to provide that. So you think he definitely uses those situations to his advantage.
Well, and with ulterior motive.
Right.
Yeah.
Was this, Jennifer, in your mind, was this a bit cult-like? Was he running a cult in a way that he had this, or was it just a guy with an outsized ego who may not have been the most talented musician in the world, but was very talented at manipulating women around him to get what he needed, whether it was voice coaching or lyrics written or sex from underage fans?
I think there was a sort of cult-like feel to it. When I would stay with him, there wasn't any food in the house, and he was the one that was supposed to provide the food for the rest of his bandmates and everyone living there.
Mhm.
And no one would eat until he was able to eat. There wasn't a car available for everyone else to use, so you were stuck in the house. And when I first had gone off on tour with him, that was like, there really wasn't like Uber and stuff everywhere. And when I was on tour with him, one of my friends came to visit me halfway through in Portland, and she's like, "You look a wreck. Like, what happened to you?" And I was explaining to her, like, he doesn't really take time to eat. He doesn't let us sleep. He keeps us going.
Oh no, he's like workhorse. You don't stop. You never stop.
I had to move his entire, I didn't know I was moving out there to also help him move his house before I went on tour as his vocal coach. So I had to also do heavy labor when I got there and help move a house. So yes, it's very cult-like, because once you're in it, he kind of has these things like, now, I paid for this, so now you owe me this. And it just continues.
What made you finally say, "I'm done," Jennifer?
Well, for me, there was a lot of things happening. Every time that he would ask me to do music for him, it was getting more involved. I was writing more of the melodies for him. It was taking a lot more time, but he was paying me less money. And then he started a new venture, the dark arts, where I guess he was starting to try to do something better. And he said he was raising money for my event, which is called Support Women Artists Now, a festival for females in the arts I've been doing for 13 years. And he posted up all this stuff about raising money for it. And then I never saw the money. But I was paid for the last time that I had worked on a song, and I noticed suspiciously that he had changed the invoice to dark arts, which let me know that I was not more than likely going to be paid for the money that he had raised in the name of my organization, and that he was playing his tricks on me. And I had already been through that for years. He hadn't really paid me. I got credit on maybe one song. So I just stopped answering the phone calls.
What do you say to him tonight as we're here, Jennifer?
If you're watching this, Dahvie, you had a really good friend in me. And it's really upsetting to me that you got so deep in with my family, that you were here for cookouts, that you met my parents, that we kind of felt like you were part of the family at certain times. And to know that you were really the person you were, and that you weren't telling the truth, and that you were keeping us around as part of your game, was totally screwed up. And I don't appreciate it.
Give me a sense for the extent of damage he did to you and your career, Jennifer.
Well, fortunately, he hasn't been able to do much, because I am one of those people that since I've been through a lot of things in my life, I speak up about them. So as soon as I found out, actually, as soon as I watched Jay and Damien, both those two videos together, because I know Jay on a personal level as well, those two things put so much together for me. And, you know, I did bring my students to sing on his track before, and they thought they were meeting this amazing rock star. And I had to go back and call every one of them and make sure that none of them were asked for their phone number. And that really hit home as a mom, because I made sure those girls were safe the whole time. But I don't know, you know, you never know. And luckily nothing did happen. And I was able to talk to all of the parents in that particular situation. But no, he hasn't hurt my career, because I wouldn't let it.
And when you talk about Jay Von Monroe, it can be somewhat controversial because there
Sorry,
are
I got kicked off there for a second.
Yeah, we got you covered. We got you covered, Fallon. We were talking about Jay, and he appeared on the show and told the story, and it's clear that he was victimized in some ways in a lot of ways by Dahvie too. But people are saying that he should have known more, he should have done more, and I'm sure, and I know because Jay has said this, that in hindsight, yeah, there was stuff that he maybe should have acted on. But the reality is, this is an investigation focusing on Dahvie Vanity, Fallon, not necessarily, and the Jeffree Star interview is very controversial as well. People saying that he should have known more and done more, taken a more aggressive stance. But it is, at the end of the day, what we're doing about Dahvie Vanity. And what do you say to him tonight, Fallon?
There's nothing I have to say to him at this point. I'm so disgusted and so hurt. And, there were times that, aside from even all of this, I was questioning myself and who I was. He's stolen so much from so many people. And I don't mean physically, items. I mean, emotionally, time. He's stolen innocence. It's not, none of that is okay. And he's somebody that I wish that I never would have met. I don't think that I would even want to acknowledge his presence at all.
Looking back, do you blame yourself at all for not seeing some of this, for falling into this trap in the first place? I mean,
I was having a
people will say, Fallon, how could you not have known all this was going on? You live.
Yeah, I did, especially when I first got the phone call from Winter. Oh my God, I probably cried for like 3 hours. I felt so bad, it's like a gut-wrenching feeling. And, I'm like, why wouldn't you have said something? Why wouldn't you come forward? And she was scared, and he made her feel like, she couldn't say anything, that basically he was going to ruin her life. And, he would have these girls so convinced too that like what he was doing with them was normal, that he would like have them hide, and he would video chat me. What I think people need to realize is too, and Jennifer's been on tour with him, he needs his time. He goes off and he does his own thing. And the way that he meticulously plans things, like you don't see him. He'll find a 5-minute window of opportunity, and clearly he'll take it. And he'll make sure that that 5-minute window, he's hoping that that person that he's involved with in that window is weak enough that they're not going to say anything. I think he wants to keep people down, so they're afraid to speak up, or he does the opposite and he acts like it's okay, like it never happened, like they're such good friends. I know myself, from arguments, he would say these terrible things. He would storm off, do God knows what now, and he'd come back and he would act like nothing ever happened. He wouldn't apologize. It was just like it never transpired. So it was a flip of a switch when he wanted it to be back to normal. But meanwhile, you're sitting there not feeling okay, knowing it's not okay. You haven't recouped, but he's jumping right back like everything's totally fine. And I know now, in being that pawn and being moved around, and after talking to, his other, the one merch girl that was there, you know, when I was involved, and she was a drummer as well. You know, I had done some touring with her and her girlfriend that did merch for him. And she's like, man, I can't believe that this stuff happened, you know, right with us there. Like nobody can fathom how he was able to do this stuff. And I spoke to this guitarist that we had on a tour, Carmen, and we were talking about some things that happened when we were on tour in Florida that I was just told. And he's like, no, like, you gotta be shitting me. Like excuse the language, but he's like, are you for real? Like, how does this happen? Like, how did we not see this? And like, you're on the road with this guy. You would think, but you don't spend every waking minute together. You're either in a band or a bus or whatever for a certain amount of time, but then it's like you don't interact with the other bands really that are on tour. You see them for a split second, you know, and then everybody kind of goes off and does their own thing. I guess he found his niche in a really disgusting craft, unfortunately.
What did he take from you?
What did he take from me? He took a whole lot, actually. You know, he took away my love for music. He took away valuable time that I should have spent with my family. He took areas of comfort that I once had. You know, I told you a little bit about my father, but one instance, even I used to work the Philadelphia Tattoo Convention because it was always over Valentine's Day weekend, which is when I lost my dad. And that was just kind of my way of doing something, keeping busy. He was supposed to come to one of the events, and instead I got a phone call from him, but it wasn't him. It was an accidental dial, and he was with another girl at that time. You know, only for him to lie and manipulate that situation. There are immeasurable amounts of things. He took away my peace. He took away my safety. He took away, you know, some business colleagues and friends of mine because, like an idiot, I defended him. I don't know. He took away a good chunk of my life. He took away my self-esteem. I mean, you name it. I'm not okay after dealing with him at all.
And what do you say, Fallon, to the other young women out there who maybe have not come forward? And I want to hear your thoughts on this too, Jennifer, as we wrap up. What do you say to them, specifically when it comes to going to law enforcement or filing a complaint or getting their stories out there? What do you tell people?
I think it's really, really important to do so, whether you've been victimized by, you know, this person or anyone else, whether it's, you know, physical, mental, sexual, you know, you need to say something to someone, you know, if for your own safety, for your own mental well-being. People that do this are not good people. It's not your fault. There are things put in place, and it can be very hard. It can be very discouraging because sometimes, you know, there isn't that physical evidence right away, or you think that you don't have enough of the case. But it's so important because I think especially in seeing instances like this, someone is able to get away with these things and do it to multiple people because people are afraid to come forward. You know, this will affect the rest of your life, and it doesn't have to be completely negative. You can find some sort of comfort and resolve eventually. But letting someone just do this to you and not standing up is more detrimental. And I think a lot of people are afraid that, you know, right away everyone's going to know who they are, or you know, this is going to be,
or that maybe they'll be targeted by fans of Dahvie Vanity, which we've seen happen.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this too, and even with the FBI agent that we're working with, and a lot of the police departments, they are very sensitive to the matter. They are very respectful to the matter. They are actually really good listeners. And they're very helpful in the case. They are for the person who's been victimized. And I don't think that, there are a lot of outlets now too. I don't think that any of us are going to turn anyone away at this point, because we know that this isn't nonsense. Like, this is stuff that actually happened to people, and we're all here for you. We have a really strong support team at this point. I don't know. I feel like I just want to like hug these people. Like, I feel so bad.
Right.
I mean,
no, I feel that way too. Week after week, people like yourselves and these other young women come forward and they pour their souls out here. And I guess the overwhelmingly good news here, Jennifer, is that it is cathartic sometimes, and we are seeing action on the part of law enforcement. Mal Levy has been in touch with law enforcement. Ashley Lilly has been in touch with law enforcement. Many of these young women have, and see that it's not too late. What do you tell people, Jennifer, as somebody in the music business who is also involved as a victim's advocate, as we wrap up tonight? What do you say to young women out there who have a story to tell to the law enforcement officials about what Dahvie Vanity did to them?
Well, as you see, if you're watching this, you're not alone, and that it takes strength to tell your story, and it's hard, but there's a lot of other people that are in your tribe. You have a tribe, okay? When it comes to something like this, everybody that's been affected by him understands what you're going through. And personally, like, for the people that know me, that have reached out to me, if you need help, I'm here. I can also help you find professional help. But this was not your fault, and you need to try to go through the appropriate channels to like help yourself heal. And that's the best thing that you could do, but it's not your fault. And you need to tell so that this person can be brought to justice.
Jennifer Hill, Fallon Vendetta, thank you so much for being with me tonight and having a seat. We are going to continue this conversation. I want to have you back on as we continue our investigation. Thanks for being so brave and compassionate, and my heart goes out to you for everything you've been through, and my respect for helping to tell the story and to supporting the other victims out there. Thanks, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Wow. We will, as I said, continue this investigation and our investigation into Greg James Jackson Onision. I want to say something that has been discussed widely on social media in the last couple of weeks, and it's about helping the victims. And I take this responsibility very seriously. And the question comes up, should you do a GoFundMe for the victims? Should you support them through some of the super chat donations? It gets a little complicated for money that comes into the show, the monetization, to give that directly to the victims for a lot of ethical reasons. What we are taking a good look at, and what we are ultimately going to do, is put together, either through sponsorship or a couple different things that we're looking at, a way for people who appear on the show, survivors, I like to say, not victims, to get counseling and therapy that is so important. And there are services available, and I'm working with some therapists who have some experience in this area, and we hope to have more to say on that the next couple of weeks. And I will promise to keep you posted on that. But it's something that I take very seriously. We all do, everyone involved in putting this show together. At the same time, I want to let you know that next Wednesday, we will have Ash Costello and Nikki Misery, who will come on and talk about this same case. So until then, thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'll see you soon. Take care.